What's going on, you guys? This is alternate day 1 and I'm going to be giving you guys a Wayfinder build video. So I know the builds in this game is pretty linear because you're either going weapon power or ability power, but this is more so about what echoes I'm using, what accessories I'm using, and the abilities I've kind of invested my points into, as well as my affinity. For those of you that are wanting to level a Kyros up, this is going to be a pretty good way to learn. Now, I am playing as heroic Kyros, but I do also have a regular Kyros I did play as well. I just upgraded to the Exalted pack, so which gave me the heroic Kyros, and I ended up leveling him up and pretty much transferred all of my echoes onto this character. But what's nice about the heroic Kyros or heroic characters in general is they get an extra echo slot as well as an additional 30 echo slot capacity. So just take it with a grain of salt. I will explain what you can do if you don't have a heroic Kyros and you're just using a regular Kyros. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So as you can see, my power rating on the right is 2533. If I was playing as the regular Kyros, last time I checked, I was, or before I transferred all my echoes over, I was like 2501 or 2502. So I was still a little over 2500 on the power rating. Now, the big difference is my ability power. On regular Kyros, I was around 10.6k or 10.8k, and now I'm at, or not even, I was at like, yeah, about 10.8, 10.9k ability power, but now I'm at 11.7k. But that's because with Heroic Kyros, you get an additional slot, which means you can apply an additional echo. So the weapon I actually use two different weapons. I have Epitaph, which is great for Kyros in general, or just any AP builds in general, because you steal ability power from your enemies when you hit them with them, as well as whenever you use your weapon ability, you gain 5 to 10% increase of ability power. Now, 5% being level 1, 7.5 being level 2, and 10% being level 3. And then my secondary weapon that I normally go to on certain bosses or situations is I run Knight's Edge. Now, I prefer running the daggers because it gives you more survivability due to the fact that you have so many iframes. But the issue with Knight's Edge and Harvest Moon is they don't have any offensive slots. So what I mean by offensive slots is if you look at the echo slots for the Epitaph, you get 2 offensive slots and then 1 defensive slot, and then every weapon gets a rush slot. Harvest Moon has 3 defensive slots. Knight's Edge also has 3 defensive slots. The only dagger weapon that has an offensive slot is the Venom Dagger, but it only is just 1 offensive slot, unfortunately. And personally, I don't really like the Venom Daggers. Knight's Edge is also better because of the fact that you get ability power built into it already. All the other daggers do not. Now, for my accessories, some of these are kind of placeholders, like the Key of Dreams is a placeholder, and Raven's Skull Focus. But the Mystic's Focus is definitely one you want to get because it gives you crit rating, crit power, and ability power. The reason why I'm using Raven's Skull Focus is because it does give me ability power, and the physical defense and the max health are actually pretty nice to have for the survivability. And then Key of Dreams is also pretty good because of the ability power and crit rating with the magic defense. The accessories you want to make sure you can get obviously is going to be the Mystic Focus, but there's one also you can get from the Archon Hand and also from farming the first, but they are very low. It's a very low drop rate. It's about a 2% to a 3% chance to get the Remnant Prayer. So the Remnant Prayer totem, it gives you the same stats, crit power, crit rating, and ability power, just like with the Mystic Focus, giving you crit rating, crit power, and ability power. And then there's one more artifact as well that I actually have, but you have to farm the Devourer. You have to farm Legion in order to get this specific accessory, which is the Spider's Fang. It also gives you crit power, ability power, and crit rating. Unfortunately, I ended up killing Legion at, I think it was S3, Sphere 3, or Sphere 2 when I ended up getting this. This is when I was just testing and I wanted to push the Sphere higher to at least to 4 so I can try to see if I can one-shot him. And, well, I can now. But this, you get Spider's Fang from him, and it's also a pretty low drop rate, or pretty much all accessories are pretty low. But the reason why you also want to get this is because it has crit power, ability power, and crit rating. If you can get Mystics, Focus, Spider's Fang, and Remnant Totem Prayer, those will be your best in slots. But aside from that, you can pretty much run any accessories that you want, that as long as it has ability power, and crit rating obviously is going to be pretty nice to have, but it isn't mandatory. Now, the reason why I am using these specific ones is because they also have the specific echo slots that I want. So I will go ahead and show you. Actually, I could just go to echoes right here. The echo slots are not guaranteed to be the same every time. They are pretty RNG. Sometimes you can get accessories that have double sword slots. Sometimes you can get them with double crosses. Sometimes you might get really unlucky and get double defensive slots for the accessory that you're looking for. So make sure if you do pick an accessory, make sure it has the right slots, because having the correct slots is going to help you a lot with budgeting, and not necessarily budgeting, but being able to choose the echoes you want. And then for my potions, I have Unfiltered Arc Blast Draught, because this gives me 1/3 of my ultimate right away, so I don't have to worry about charging it from the very beginning. It just charges a quarter of it automatically, which is very nice. And then Greater Primeval Elixir 2 just gives me a 50%, I believe, ability power increase, but it caps out an extra 500 and something ability power. I just use it just to use it, but it's really not that big of a deal. You can use whatever other potion you want. Unfiltered Arc Blast Draught honestly is going to be your bread and butter though, because your ultimate is going to be massive damage. Unfortunately, I don't have any artifacts, but if you do have an artifact, or if you're looking for one, the one I would recommend looking for is going to be the one you get from the first, because you deal 5% more damage while you are at full health. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the echoes. So as you can see, on Heroic Kyros, you have 6 slots. On a regular Kyros, you only have 5. So in this case, let's just pretend I am using regular Kyros. So if I was using a regular Kyros, I would just take off this one echo, and as you can see, I'm at 296 out of 300, basically 300. We're going to ignore the 330. So this is still exactly what you would want to use. The Shuul Baelhorn Echo, Hollow 1 Echo, Codex Sage Echo, Hollow Queen Echo, and Goblin Seer Echo. So the reason why I'm using the Goblin Seer Echo, even though it's very low level and cheap, it's because it is very low level and cheap. It makes it easier to use it, as well as just budgeting. You don't have to worry about needing to make room for something very expensive or anything like that. I just gotta look for it. Oh, it's the wrong one. I have way too many echoes. Hopefully we have a way to sort all these out eventually. But yeah, so the Goblin Seer Echoes are going to be very nice to have because they give you a bigger amount of ability power versus magic defense. Now, the one that I also have that gives you more magic defense versus ability power is called Bonebinder Echo. Now, I'm only using this just for like a stat stick, but if anything, once I get another Goblin Seer Echo, I'm going to end up replacing it with this, but it has to be a purple one. I don't really want to have a blue or green or gray Goblin Seer Echo. But once I end up getting it, I will end up replacing the Bonebinder Echo with that, so I get an additional 200 ability power. And then the Shuul Baelhorn Echo. So this comes from this is a boss that spawns from an event inside either repository or the Codex hall or the other one in the middle. There's going to be like a little area in like a giant room, like a there's I don't really know how to explain it, but there's going to be four statues. You have to turn the statues so that there's a light beam facing towards the middle, and once it faces towards the middle, you're going to go to the middle and place. It's going to have tokens for you to use. So these tokens are going to be these data fragments. You're going to need to use one of these data fragments. You're going to want to make sure you use the data fragment Goblin, because when you use this and all four statues are facing towards the middle, then Shuul Baelhorn is going to spawn. And well, he's going to spawn at the last wave, which is going to end up giving you this specific echo. Now, you might get unlucky and get a gray or green, but it is a really nice echo to have because it's a lot of crit rating, and having more crit rating never hurts. The big ones is going to be Hollow 1 Echo, Codex Sage Echo, and Hollow Queen Echo. Hollow Queen Echo, you're only going to need it once unless you have more cross echo slots somewhere else. But for the most part, you generally only going to have it on your character. This is going to be the best specific cross echo you're going to ever want to get, the Hollow Queen Echo. You get this from the Hollow Forest. In the Hollow Forest, you have to go into an arena where you fight waves of enemies, and then the Hollow Queen spawns at the very end, and then she guarantees dropping her echo, which is really nice. But the rarity is obviously going to be RNG. Most of the time, you might end up just getting a gray or a green one. Now, the Hollow ones, they come from the same map. It's going to be in the Hollow Forest. These are going to be higher levels as well. As you can see, they drop at level 24, so they are going to be pretty or very expensive. So you really want to make sure you slot these into your attack slots. As you see, it costs is going to cost quite a lot. It's going to cost about 120 if it's not slotted, or more, depending on the rarity of it. But the Hollow 1 Echo is really nice because it's just straight raw ability power. I don't know what the purple is like because I haven't gotten one, but the blue is at 735, and then as you can see, green is at 665, and gray is at 594. So it's a pretty big jump between each one. And then the Codex Sage Echo, you get these from the repository. It's the same place as where you end up pretty much farming for a Shuul Baelhorn. These guys don't drop their echoes as often. Unfortunately, they are still pretty rare, and if they do drop, a lot of times it is going to be grays. So if you do end up farming them, just know you're going to be farming for quite a while, because like I said, I've farmed for a while, and the best I got was the blue. And then the last one that you're going to end up looking at getting is going to be the Tiding Echo. Tiding Echo is really nice because it's also just like the Hollow 1 Echo, but a level 3 version, which means it's very cheap, so you don't need to worry about actually slotting it in one of the offensive slots, because it would just be a waste. You'd be cutting 44 in half with 22 or whatever the purple is. I have the purple right here, 52. So you don't need to slot these in any specific ones. You just throw them in wherever you feel like it can handle that amount of echo. Now, for the abilities, I put all in on Siphon Radiant, all in on Savage Rake, and then 1 point on Arcane Focus. This is going to be a very, very, very important that you can actually max out Siphon Radiant. You don't need to max this one out first. If you're solo or just in general and you need survivability, you want to max out Savage Rake just because the healing is a lot, and you don't heal per enemy you hit. You heal every time you hit with the Savage Rake, so you heal 1 time per Savage Rake. But the Siphon Radiant for level 3 is very, very, very important, because even though it doesn't specify how much more damage you're going to deal to the enemy, it says increases damage taken for 10 seconds. You're not taking more damage. The enemy that is affected by Siphon Radiant is taking more damage. And from what I've tested, it seems to double the amount of damage you are dealing. And I don't know if it actually applies for your group or your allies or whoever from the outside sources. I would assume so because it's just making that specific enemy take more damage. But yeah, that's why you'll end up seeing, like in the video that I just posted, where I crit 139k, and I actually did a 144k non-crit on a Sphere 1 Legion as well. And like I said, it's 144,000 damage non-crit, which is really insane. But yeah, it basically doubles the amount of damage you will do, or that is dealt to this enemy, which is very, 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 very massive. Now for the siphon or the scythe, you get this ability called Arcane Harvest, a spinning slash that deals damage and steals ability power from enemies, increasing in power for each momentum level consumed. So I'm assuming, or not just myself, but a lot of people have assumed that you're stealing around 20 to 30% ability power. I'm pretty sure it says it somewhere. I think it's when you're crafting it or something. But actually, I'm pretty sure it's just in the tooltip. It's like 10, 20, 30% or something like that. But or for each momentum. But it is a quite significant amount of ability power that you're obtaining, that you're stealing, and you deal more damage when you do steal. And obviously, like if I were to switch to using Knight's Edge, the ability for Knight's Edge is Daggerfall, forms multiple magical daggers that fly at nearby enemies. Just keep in mind that it's only going to be 3 daggers that fly out. You don't regenerate multiple daggers while you're in this rage mode or whatever you want to call it. So that was a little unfortunate. I was hoping that I would consistently keep seeing daggers just fly out. Now for my affinity, I maxed out on instinct, put 5 in discipline and 9 in focus. So there's 2 ways you can technically go about this. You can either go full on in instinct, and this is for you if you want to build your ultimate up really fast. If you don't really care too much about going with ultimate and you really want to do the most amount of damage with Savage Rake, then you want to put all in on focus, so that way you boost your arcane fragment cap from 2 to 5, because technically you can have up to 5 rakes, or savage rakes, but if you go with this, you can have up to 8 savage rakes, which technically savage rake does the most amount of DPS for Kyros, but the ultimate is the big bursty ability that can skip damage phases and potentially also one-shot bosses. But for bosses that don't have damage gates, the Savage Rake is going to be a lot stronger than the ultimate, because the damage on it just builds up. But yeah, you can go either or. As like I said, I went with instinct because I am mainly wanting to focus on trying to one-shot bosses, especially, or at least pass specific phases. And then obviously you're going to max out your weapon if you can. And now for your mastery, obviously my mastery on the heroic Kyros for the two-handed is not maxed out, but it is maxed out on the twin striker melee, because I've been mainly playing with dual daggers since I was leveling up, and plus I was using the side quests to also level up. But on my base Kyros, I have Executioner melee maxed out. And with this, you want to make sure you go with momentum dispersal. Compared to everything else, this is going to be the biggest damage increase for you if you're using a scythe or really any two-handed weapon, because you are going to gain a 10% ability damage per momentum consumed, and it lasts for 10 seconds. Now, the thing about this is it has an infinite amount of stacks that you can technically build up on. If you wanted to, you can get up to 100 stacks, which means you're going to have 1000% ability power. Obviously, that's going to take a while for you to stack up that much, and then it also lasts for 10 seconds. The duration does reset, though, every time you use it. You use a new momentum consumption, but it's really not worth trying to stack up for 1000% ability power. If anything, going for just 2 to 3 momentum spins is more than enough, because that's a 20 to 30% increase. Even the 10% is fine. And then for Twin Striker, I did try Arcane Dance, which was pretty decent, and then same with Flowing Blades, but I didn't really care for the 3 innovation orbs, although the innovation orbs has a 50% chance of giving me an arcane fragment. I went with Arcane Repose because with this, anytime I repulse an enemy or repo an enemy, I deal 20% more damage to that enemy for 6 seconds, which is really nice for specific bosses like the First or the Argent Hand, or just really anything that continuously keeps attacking. And then, or especially like if you're farming in an expedition, this is really nice because it's easy to parry things, and then you just burst them down. Um, so yeah, Arcane Repose is going to be your best option. Obviously, I don't know what Guardian Melee and Marksman Ranged options would be because I don't play those. But yeah, that's pretty much it with all of this. Obviously, there's going to be specific ways of playing, however you're doing all this. Specific bosses kind of need specific playstyles. This build works throughout all of it, but you might just need to change up your playstyle depending on the bosses. And now the other thing is, if you're trying to one-shot someone like Legion or the First or just any boss that has damage gates, you have to first learn where the damage threshold is. So if you are soloing on Dread Legion Sphere 4, he has 150,000 health. His damage threshold is at 110,000, and once he gets under that, even if you're at 109,999 health on him, he's going to break out and become immune. So you don't want to break him under 110,000, otherwise, GG's. It's pretty much every 30% of their health is their threshold. But yeah, you just got to make sure you learn how how not to go past the threshold. And then before I forget, the rotation that I generally do, if I'm, for example, going against something like Legion, I make sure I use my Savage Rake first because I want to get the damage buff you get from your Affinity right here in Discipline. Increases damage dealt after using an Arcane Fragment by 5% for 5 seconds. So you should technically already have at least 3 or 2 Arcane Fragments on your character because you had used Siphon Radiant to kill the ads, which will give you 3 3 Arcane Fragments. And then once you do that, you're going to use Savage Rake, and then you're going to just hit the boss 3 times, so you can have up to a 15% increase in damage. It's just all damage is increased, even just 2 times, but obviously 3 times is going to be your best option. And then after you do that, you're going to want to then go ahead and pop Siphon Radiant. Once you've popped Siphon Radiant, drop Arcane Focus, and then go ahead and use Hand of Reckoning. The reason why you want to drop Arcane Focus after you used Siphon Radiant is because if you use Arcane Focus beforehand and then you pop Siphon Radiant, this will detonate and then it'll push the boss over. Like I've seen my Arcane Focus hit a non-crit for 30k, and then it just pretty much messed up the one phase for me because I wasted my ultimate and had a reset. So you want to make sure you use the Arcane Focus after, because the Arcane Focus will still pop even after you've used your ultimate. So you use your ultimate, and then all that damage threshold the Arcane Focus built up will also detonate, because Arcane Focus will release its damage either after it's reached max, which is enough from the ultimate, or after 8 seconds. So it's just really nice. But now that's only for damage gated enemies. So remember, you use Savage Rake first 3 times into Siphon Radiant to get that buff, and then drop Arcane Focus, and then hit them with a Hand of Reckoning. And then obviously you're going to want to make sure you give yourself some sort of buffs with Arcane Harvest and your consumable and whatever other buffs you have. But realistically, it should only be just those 2, the Arcane Harvest and your consumable. So remember, it's Savage Rake 3 times, Siphon Radiant once, obviously, and then Arcane Focus right after, and then drop Hand of Reckoning. Now, if you're going against an enemy that doesn't have a damage gate or like damage threshold, then just go ahead and pop Arcane Focus immediately on them, and then you want to use Siphon Radiant so that way they are taking that extra damage, and then use Savage Rake so you can burst them down and just use as much of your Savage Rake as possible, exhaust all of it, 3 to 5 of however many you have, and then once this is all gone, then pop Hand of Reckoning. This is going to be your finisher. The reason why you're going to use this last is because the animation is a little long, and you really want to make use of that damage buff for your Savage Rake. The Savage Rake is going to, like I said, is going to do a lot more DPS than the Hand of Reckoning, just because it's faster. I am also going to show you guys a little speed run I did against the Argent Hand. But anyways, this is pretty much it. And I think I just crashed. Yeah. Oh, kicked. I was kicked out of data inactivity. But that's pretty much it with the game, or with the build video. Hopefully this helped you guys out. I know this is a little longer than anticipated, but hopefully this helped you guys out. If it does, go and leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know down in the comment section. And have a good day, good night, and peace. Or 3. That felt really fast, actually. 56 seconds. That was pretty good. I think that's the fastest I can ever do it. I don't think I'm ever going to do it any faster, to be honest.